How and when did you get started?
When did I get started in radio? When I was 16 years old, WTRU, AM 1600, the living end, as it was known on the dial, on the radio, 5,000 watt radio station. I was on the weekends playing the old rock and roll, the Monkees, the Beatles, and all that, having the time of my life. It was just a huge dream come true because for years, even when I was 11 and 12 years old, I'd actually practice with my 45 record player in my bedroom, So I had that wanting to be on the radio in my mind for many years, even before I got into radio. Then I was, as I said, WTRU, and then, there was times when I was on both WTRU and WMUS. I was at MUS the first day they went country, and it shot off like a rocket. It was just something playing Dolly Parton and Dumb Blonde. I don't even think you can play that song anymore. And Tim Achterhoff, my good friend, was there, and he was a workaholic, still is, and he made WMUS what it was and what it is. It's a great radio station. And I was there doing the morning show until 1986, and then I took a year off, and I got a divorce. I was a rotten husband. I'll be the first to admit that, with all those ladies calling you all the time. The temptation was too great. Yeah. And then I went to Oldies 98.3 for, 5 years. And wasn't really on the air because it was all satellite fed. I was out selling radio commercials, and that's where the money really was at. And, that's about the time the business pie started to shrink because of satellite radio. Every piece became smaller. So the owners of your many radio stations, they didn't really want to, or they couldn't hire local people to be on the air. The expense was just too great for being on the air and insurance. So they cut it way down and put it on the bird, as they called it, the satellite. And it still is that way. And let me see. I think I went back to WKBZ, or I went back to WKBZ when Bishop Wells.
Oh, yeah.
Guy by the name of Bishop Wells.
That's when I left.
Yes. I don't blame you. But he had some good ideas, but a little one-sided ideas. And I was just on the AM. They had the FM playing the urban music, which was great, And the ratings came out, and they thought for sure that their FM was going to beat everybody. And so the ratings came out, and the AM beat the FM. And they accused me of cheating. They were saying, oh, he knows somebody, So just a lot of other small radio stories, but to me, WKBZ was the #1 station, in my book. Started in 1972, and I walked in the door, and it was like walking into a time capsule. It was a beautiful old building, old huge wooden doors, and strictly an AM station. They were given a license at one time to go FM. That was probably in 62, 63, but that's before FM was really popular. And they thought, no, it's never going to do much, so they let the license go. But, so I was doing the morning show, playing a lot of great music, Tony Bennett, Frank Sinatra, and stuff like that. Those were golden days. I still remember them. And then Cliff Martin, who's here, not on the camera, right, but he's to my left. He did Studio 85 at night. Very talented man. There on the camera now. Playing, the classics. And the music you can only get now on, CDs or on YouTube. Things like you don't hear that kind of music anymore on the radio. The audience just isn't there.
I got to ask you this question just
Sure.
because I remember. Do you remember when Eagle 97 first came out, the 70 station.
Oh, yeah.
And they wanted to hire me to be morning guy with you.
Oh, really? I don't remember,
that.
No.
Yeah. And I was working at KBZ at the time, and I stayed over there. But they asked me, and it was Matt Andrews, I think, they ended up
Oh,
to
yeah.
work with you.
Yeah, he passed away not too long
Did he
ago.
really?
Yes, about 4 years ago, Matt Andrews. Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, as far as stations in Muskegon, you pretty much answered that question because you pretty much worked at True, and you worked at MUS, and you worked at WKBZ. But now, can you tell me a little bit about Real Gold Radio and John? Basically, talk about John a little bit.
Oh, you mean 98.9, Real Gold Radio, the low power FM. John Allen, good friend of all of ours. He was at MUS for many years, and he moved to Texas, was part of Clear Channel, and he was the engineer for several radio stations. John was a good guy, but he was way overworked. He made good money, but 7 radio stations, and when you have a thunder shower, they all want to be back on. So he went through a lot. He was there for, 5, 6 years, and he moved back to Whitehall. And he always wanted a low-power FM. So he applied for a license, and he got one. 98.9, Real Gold Radio. It was 100 watts, and they also streamed on the World Wide Web, and that was the first time for me, to have streaming capabilities. So I was on there for about 2 years playing the good old music, music that I started with in 1966, And I was also selling radio time. I'd go out and visit everybody in the community, and they'd buy commercials. And it was a great time. Very nice station. Then John had a massive heart attack, and I left. And now it's still on the air, but it's all totally computerized. And Oscar, you know that because you still deal with them, right? Yeah. Oh yeah, WKBZ, there was Bill Stevens and John Graska. And at WTRU, there was Skip Knight, Ray Hosier for a while, and Bill Merchant. And who was the manager that's still alive? What's his name?
Dave Lorenz?
No, the older guy. He's
Fred
Tascone.
Yeah.
Fred Tascone was the boss in the 60s, and I think he resigned somewhere in the early 70s. But he's still alive. He's a great guy,
92.
Yeah, 92 years old.
He fired me twice.
Did he really?
Smart man.
Yeah, but in recent years he owned an ice cream shop on Sherman, and he did pretty well. He loved it because he didn't have to bill anybody. He'd just be at the window taking money. But he's a classy guy. He made a lot of money in the stock market, and
I think everybody's worked for him too.
Oh yeah. Sure.
This is a scary one to ask you, but crazy stories you can tell.
About radio?
About radio, yeah, just about radio.
Well, a big blooper of mine happened when I was at WTRU, when we did half-hour news headlines. We had to read them, and I was 16 years old, and I think we had President Johnson, right, as our president at that time. And I was reading a headline like, President Johnson has circumcised Barry Goldwater. I'll never forget that to this day. Why that popped into my mind, I have no idea. But I remember doing that. News headlines, President Johnson circumcised Barry Goldwater.
The biggest blooper that I can remember that involved you was when Bill Heintzelman and I were on in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
And we announced that you had been in a major fire.
Yes.
Do you remember?
I remember that. There was a news headline, Jim Cox was in a major fire. He survived, but he's badly burned.
Yeah.
And I heard that on WKBZ that morning.
Yeah.
I thought, what the heck? So I called up Bill Heintzelman, and you were on the air, and you put me on the air, and saying, well, the story was totally untrue. And so how did that get going?
It was the guy was said he was given your name.
Yeah.
Because he was doing the radio thing. I'm
Yeah.
the radio guy, Jim Cox, getting getting girls to
Yeah.
hello to him?
Just some guy that knew me over the years, so he said he was me.
Yeah.
You know, but he got burned up, and I don't know.
I remember when you called me too, you said, "Hey, buddy, I'm."
Oh boy, you sound pretty good being in the hospital all burned up.
Because my mom's a little upset with this whole thing, this story that's going on. And
Yeah. So the good old days of radio. There's so many stories that I've forgotten.
Yeah.
You know, that were, it was like any other business,
Any
really.
stories about when you worked with Cliff?
No, because I was doing the morning show. He was always at nighttime.
Yeah.
So it was, hours different. So I never really got to see him. I listened to him all the time. And my brother, Les Cox, who owned Muskegon Automotive Supply for many years, and his son, Scott Cox, owns it now. He bought it from my brother. But my brother just recently, 2 years ago in February, passed away of pancreatic cancer. And that's almost a death sentence anymore. You have cancer of the pancreas. And he did everything possible to get rid of it. He was a great guy, thousands of friends, because, he was always at the counter, selling parts, so a lot of people got to know him. But he died of pancreatic cancer pretty quick, thank God.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
I guess the last question is, do you have any advice for anybody that wants to get into radio broadcasting?
Oh man, I don't know. What is there to do in radio anymore? It's all corporate owned. That's another reason why I got out of it, because with corporate owned, it was just the bottom line. I think things are a little better now, but not much. But it was all corporate owned. Bottom line, you were just a number. And there's been a lot of places that have been, or a lot of people that have been let go from iHeartRadio or Clear Channel just because they couldn't really afford them anymore.
Right.
Andy O'Reilly is one of them. Yeah. And the young lady, what's her name?
Sam Roberts?
No, one before that.
Britta.
Britta Cleveland.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was very talented. Mm-hmm. And but they let her go because she was costing them too much. So that's, corporate radio is what really screwed it up. And combined with satellite radio, and you can get any song you want to anymore off the internet or whatever by the thousands.
So no good. You can't be the guy at 16 years old walking into a radio station saying, "Can I have a job?"
No.
Yeah.
Now in sales, if they want to get out and sell commercials, that there's always a selling job available. But as far as being on the air, you're only talking about very small radio stations anymore in small communities. And it's a fun thing to do, but you won't make much money. So it's nice to be on here today. And just want to wish everybody the best of the holidays.
Okay. Anything else you want to say?
Nope, that's about it.
All right.
Thank you.
Sir. All right.
Yeah, and it's been fun working with you off and on, Oscar.
Yeah.